Well, here it is. The 6.3 is in the shop and up on the lift. You know, I think the beast is happier than happier today, okay? Because this is the first time this car has been inside in over 18 years. And it's really kind of amazing. The more I get into this car, the more I'm amazed at its condition. You go back to part one. If you haven't watched part one and part two, you need to go back when I acquired this car and see it sitting down on the ground in a bunch of blackberry bushes. You can imagine, you know, that first time I looked at the car, I actually turned around and walked away. I did. I kept looking at this thing, I says, man. And when my mechanic first saw it, we went to pick it up, he looked at me and he thought I was crazy for buying this car. But it's looking better all the time. It's making me happier and happier as the days go by. And what I want to do today is show you why I'm so happy, because as we got it up in there and did that first initial inspection of the chassis, there's some things I'm looking at that are pretty unique for an old W109 chassis. And number one on that list is rust and rust out. Of course, there's surface rust on the car. That I can deal with. But at this point in my life, when I see a rusted out car, I just run the other way. I know anything can be fixed, but not for me anymore. If the car has rust out in it, I just turn around and walk away. So what I'm going to do is we're going to take a close look inside the front fender first, and then I'll take you back to the back and we'll kind of look at a couple things that I've seen back there. But you can see from this picture already, obviously there's a few areas of surface rust, but you have a lot of the original moss green paint still underneath here. Nobody's come underneath here and mucked it up with, you know, aftermarket undercoating or black paint, or the worst stuff you can spray in here is that cheap body undercoating. You know, if you've watched any of my other videos, you know I don't even like the factory undercoating because some of the problems it causes in trapping water and moisture and causing rust out. But I'm going to bring the camera in here. We're going to take a look at a couple of key points here. And then we'll talk a little bit more about what's going on down the rocker panels and in the rear of the car. The inspection principles I'm going to talk about now apply to most Mercedes from the early 60s up to the mid 1970s. That includes the 110, the 111, the 112, the 108, the 109, the 114, 115 chassis. All those chassis that had this pinch weld down here on the rocker panels, they have some of the same significant type of rust problems. The first area I look at is right here. This is the area that's going to be rusted out. And you can see it has that heavy body undercoating. Look at it starting to split right here. Now, I would say in 8 out of 10 times that I start popping this body undercoating off here, this is factory undercoating, I'll find a rust hole. Sometimes a really big rust hole. So I'm gonna go in and get this off. Let's see if we got some rust out here. Now, once again, I'm not worried about surface rust. Look at that, see? Only a very small section. And you can see the original metal right there isn't rusty. So we only have about a 50-cent piece of rust right in that corner. That's very unusual. And then this area along here, on the pinch weld, you can kind of look at that and you want to kind of poke right in here. See, I'm just hitting this and I can tell it doesn't have that hollow sound as if it's rusted out inside. And always, if you're going to look at one of these cars to purchase, pop these covers off for the jack points and really inspect the jack points. They will rust out up in here and you'll have, I've seen this so bad that you try to jack the car up that this will actually bend. So that's another good test. If the seller will allow you to do it, if you suspect rust out inside here, just put the jack in and start jacking it up and see what happens. Now, the other area in the front is what is happening under this front fender. This will give you a good clue if you're going to have rust issues inside here, because the rust will show up right at the attach point behind this trim piece. Now, I've already removed the screw here, and I'm just going to pop this trim piece off, and let's take a look underneath here, okay? All right, I'm not going to take it all the way off. Look at that. Amazing. Now Now I might have a little bit of rust here. Yeah, a little surface rust. Let's check and see how solid it is. All right, it's real solid, and very seldom do I see one of these 108 or 109 chassis with Phillips screws that are that clean. Granted, there's a little bit of rust, but I bet if I get a screwdriver on that, these screws will come out and there's no rust right here. Get a little surface rust, but look at that, I'm going right through to the primer. The factory primer is still there, so even this little screw hole will cause rust issues, and you'll pull that screw out and it'll be all rusted out right in that corner. So you see why I'm happier? I mean, look at this. Look at how solid this body is. Let's take a look at the back end. Another common area where you might spot some rust on these is right behind this pinch weld. You know, the rocker panel can be painted over, and that's usually done, but people don't usually bother to try to disguise the back side of this pinch weld. So you look all the way down here. I'm looking at this one, and it's one of the cleanest ones I've ever seen. Look, we're still seeing some original paint here, and I don't even see any surface rust. It's just kind of dirty, and it isn't even that dirty. Of course, I have pressure washed it. Now notice I pulled off the trim strip. The trim strip coming off is going to give you some clues. This is amazing that you see these holes aren't rusty. These are very prone to rust because they get, you know, the bare metal right on that edge. It'll just start growing. I've seen these holes just eat away. This is very common on all these models that use this type of lower chrome trim piece with these plastic pieces that hold the trim in. Look here, you've got a little bit of surface rust, see, there and there. But once again, I'm checking for how solid that is. I'm already hitting you know, clean metal there. So this is just surface rust. That's just surface rust. But look at here. This is the one that really amazed me, is the drain holes in the door. I mean, very seldom. This car sat outside in the rain for years. Very seldom you see drain holes that aren't even rusty. Now there is a little bit of surface rust here and a little bit here, but I bet I take these door panels off and find the inside of these doors in excellent condition. So this right here is really making me happy, okay? Now let's move back a little bit more. Right below the rear end, the very tail end of that lower trim, stainless trim piece is a very common area for rust. The reason is the edge of that rubs against the fender here, and it'll break through. Any part where you break through the paint is cause for growing rust. Once again, I'm scraping this away. A lot of times you'll start scraping and you'll actually get holes here. Once again, you know, you can see that's very solid metal there. Okay, now look inside this lip here. This gets impacted with dirt, and you want to check for rust in there. But this is another real common area right in here, because this is that heavy factory undercoating, which tends to trap moisture. I've peeled back this undercoating right in here on these models, and you'll find a big hole in here. So we've got some separation right here. We've got some surface rust. Let's do the same thing here. Let's peel this off and see if we have any problems. Look at that. Same thing that we found on the front fender. This is very, very localized rust right there. Very localized, can easily be cleaned up. If I'm doing a preservation restoration where I'm trying to make this look original, I can come in here and clean this up, treat this with miracle paint, and then coat it. I can actually coat it and get some grain to it, so it looks like factory undercoating. And I'm looking all up above here, in behind here, the upper lips. There's no evidence of rust anywhere through here. Isn't that amazing? You also want to follow this edge all the way across here. This is where the undercoating, the factory undercoating, will start to separate. Any little break in that undercoating, you'll get moisture under there, and that's what causes rust. And if you peel it off, it's real common to find actual rust holes, not just surface rust. And the other real common weak area is right here in this corner of the rear fender. I would say 7 out of 10 of these cars, the 60s cars and the 108s, 109, 111 chassis, this is rusted out right here, and it has a lot to do with how tight, it's a double seam, they use heavy factory undercoating right there, and you have water in the trunk, which tends to collect in this corner. So this is a weak area. You want to really check that out. And then coming across here, this whole lower pan under the spare tire, the drain hole, I went ahead and removed the plug. A lot of times it'll be rusted out all the way around the drain hole area. Now if you look right here, I do have a little rust right there. Probably from water being trapped under the spare tire. So coming back in this area also, you'll get rust out in here and then across underneath that muffler area. So I cannot say that this is you know, 100% rust-free car. But those of you who are watching this, you know why I'm happy, because if you've seen a few of these, and I've seen a lot of these 108s and 109s over the years, you know why I'm excited today for what I'm seeing. You know, there's a few spots of rust I'm gonna have to deal with, but man, no welding, no patch paneling, no, you know, some of you might be thinking, I know particularly those of you who've never restored rusted out, what I call them rust buckets, it never just stops. It's like the tip of a rustberg. You see a little rust here and you start digging. Next thing you know, you have a big hole. And the other problem is every single bolt you touch is rusty. Particularly if the car's been subject to road salt, I won't just walk away from the car. I'll run. I mean, I'll like sprint if I detect that it's been subject to road salt. You see that I've got a video on my website where I go through this whole process of inspection. I've got a very rusty car that came out of Canada. And if you're interested in seeing that video, I'll put a link below. But man, you need to really look at these cars closely. So I'm happy. I'm happy with what I've got. I'm gonna let you pan underneath the car to prove my point. And you're gonna look at all the bolts and all the connection, all the fittings under this car. They're not all rusty, because you can spend hours and hours dealing with rusty fasteners, broken fasteners, when you get one of these cars that's been exposed to road salt. So take a look underneath. You're going to enjoy what you see. I'm going to try rolling the camera under the car so you can see what I see when I walk underneath it. Pardon me if it's a little shaky or if you hear a little squeaking of the trolley wheels, but let's go. Look at the area under the gas tank, how clean that is. And as we move forward, you're going to get to see that rear leveling valve. Look at how nice that looks. We cleaned that up, of course, with the pressure washer. And look at the rear end. You know, once again, you got a little surface rust. Even the exhaust system's not bad. But what you're focusing on here is the body panels. Okay? Look at the underfloor panels. And I'll swing over here, particularly to the right side, and you can see how clean that underfloor panel is. And also, there's the back side of that rocker. You know, you maybe have two very small spots of rust. You got a little spot of rust there. Okay, I've got to hang up a little bit, and then we'll swing forward along the bottom of the engine and transmission, and we're going to swing back here, and you can see the back side of the other rocker and the floor underneath the driver's side. I don't think I've ever seen a 108 or 109 that hasn't been restored this clean underneath. If you're watching this video and you've been around these cars, I'm sure you are happy for me, okay? Because you're thinking, wow, Ken, I'm impressed. Now, if you're not familiar with these cars, you know, this isn't going to mean all that much to you, but I should warn you, these, the 111 chassis, the 108, the 109 chassis are getting more and more popular. People want to get these old Mercedes because they look cool, and you'll have to admit they have that classic Mercedes look. So if you're on the hunt for one of these, I hope you find these rust inspection tips helpful. I would highly recommend when you go to look at one of these that you take along either a carpet or a big piece of cardboard, okay, and some goggles, you know, some eye protection, and a good flashlight, and plan to get under the car. You know, you slide the cardboard underneath there and crawl around. You can't believe how many of these I've looked at that it's only taken me 2 minutes. And in fact, sometimes you're really frustrated because you drive for 2 hours and the guy says the car is rust-free. I roll up with my piece of cardboard, pull it out of the trunk, put it on the floor, slide it underneath the car, and look at the guy and said, hey, have you ever been under here? And I say, adios. Because I'll get under these cars and you'll start seeing all of this rust. And if not, be very suspicious if the whole bottom of the car has been undercoated and painted black, okay? You really want to be suspicious there. So this doesn't mean I don't have a lot of work to do on this car, okay? There's still a lot to do, even with prepping for body and paint, but to eliminate the whole problem of major rust out, rusty fasteners, and all the time lost in dealing with that is a major issue. It's a really big thing with me and a lot of other people who restore these type of cars. So in the next video, we're going to talk about the brakes, and we're going to talk after that, following that, we'll talk about the air suspension, show you some of the components of the air suspension system and some of the problems I see already. Notice I've already removed the brake calipers. I wanted to do that because we're going to show you in the next video series on the Beast how to inspect a caliper. Now, if it's been sitting for 19 years, don't expect much, okay? We did notice that it looks like the calipers had been changed. We did notice that it looked like a bunch of parts were probably new before the car was parked. But that doesn't mean we're not going to have to do some repair and replacement on the brakes. So subscribe to my channel and stay tuned for the next episode on the Beast.